The verdict of exile, the assembly hall of the Galactic Federation, stretched across 3 kilometers of crystalline architecture, its walls reaching toward a dome that seemed to touch the stars themselves. Ambassador Maria Santos had walked these halls for 15 years, representing Earth in the most important political body in known space. Today, she walked them for the last time as a welcome guest. The chamber housed representatives from 847 different species, each seated in specially designed alcoves that accommodated their unique biology. Some floated in spheres of liquid methane. Others perched on heated stones, and many existed as pure energy contained within geometric force fields. The diversity had always amazed Maria, but today it felt like standing before a jury of alien judges who had already decided her fate. Council. Prime Zethkar called the session to order with a sound that resonated through every translator in the hall. His species, the Korthani, resembled massive insects with crystalline shells that reflected the chamber's bioluminescent lighting. He had been Council Prime for over 2 centuries, and his voice carried the weight of galactic law. The motion before us today concerns the status of species designation 4.79, commonly known as humanity or humans from the world they call Earth, Zethkar announced. The charges brought against this species are severe and have been debated. For the past solar cycle, Maria gripped the edges of her speaking platform, her knuckles white against the smooth alien metal. She had spent months preparing for this moment, but no amount of preparation could ease the weight of representing her entire species in what amounted to a cosmic trial. The first accusation came from the ethereal collective, beings of pure thought who existed as shifting patterns of light. Their representative, designated as Harmony of Distant Stars, spoke in mathematical equations that the translators converted to standard galactic common. Humanity displays dangerous levels of innovation, the entity stated. In the mere 50 standard years since first contact, they have advanced technologically at a rate that disrupts the natural order of galactic development. They question established protocols and suggest modifications to systems that have maintained peace for millennia. Maria felt her diplomatic training kick in, forcing her voice to remain steady despite the anger building in her chest. Honored Council, progress and innovation have always been the foundation of galactic civilization. Humanity has contributed solutions to problems that had plagued member species for generations. Our medical research has eliminated 3 major diseases. Our agricultural techniques have increased food production on 17 worlds, and our conflict resolution methods have prevented 2 wars. The next speaker was Representative Voidwalker of the Shadow Syndicate, a species that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that human science couldn't fully comprehend. Their form shifted constantly, making it difficult to focus on their words. The humans share knowledge too freely, Voidwalker intoned. They have no respect for the traditional gatekeeping of information. They distribute their discoveries without requiring proper payment or political alliance. This disrupts the carefully maintained balance of power that keeps our galaxy stable. Maria's mind raced through the political implications. She was beginning to understand that this wasn't really about humanity being dangerous or disruptive. This was about power, about an established order that benefited from scarcity and controlled information. Humanity's tendency to freely share knowledge and collaborate across species lines threatened the very foundation of how galactic politics worked. Dr. Alex Chun, Earth's chief scientist and Maria's closest advisor, activated his private communication channel from the observation deck. His voice reached her through a quantum-encrypted earpiece that even the advanced alien scanners couldn't detect. "Maria, I'm reading massive energy buildups around the chamber," Alex whispered. "They're not just planning to expel us from the Federation. They're preparing something much worse." Before Maria could respond, Zethkar called for the formal vote. The process was ancient and ceremonial, with each species casting their decision. Through a complex ritual that reflected their unique culture, the aquatic collective released bioluminescent spores that glowed green for guilty. The machine intelligence uploaded their verdict directly to the central computer system. The hive minds spoke in unison, their collective consciousness reaching a unanimous decision. One by one, the votes were tallied. Maria watched in growing horror as the count climbed higher and higher in favor of exile. Even species that humanity had directly helped, worlds they had saved from natural disasters or economic collapse, voted against them. The final tally appeared. On every display in the chamber, 821 votes for exile, 26 votes against. The margin was overwhelming, a clear rejection of humanity's place in galactic society. The motion passes, Sethkar announced, his voice carrying no emotion. Species 4.7.9 is hereby expelled from the Galactic Federation. All trade agreements are void, all communication channels will be severed, and all human citizens currently residing on member worlds have 30 standard days to return to their home system. Maria stood to deliver her final statement as Earth's ambassador, but Sethkar continued speaking, and his next words sent ice through her veins. Furthermore, to ensure the stability of galactic civilization and prevent any future disruption from this species, the Council hereby authorizes the activation of a Class 7 containment barrier around the Sol system. The chamber fell silent. Even among the alien representatives, there were gasps of shock and what might have been protest. A Class 7 containment barrier hadn't been used in over 10,000 years. It was considered a relic of the ancient wars, a weapon so powerful and absolute that most species believed they had been dismantled. Alex's voice crackled through Maria's earpiece with barely contained panic. Maria, massive energy signatures are appearing throughout the system. They're activating some kind of ancient technology. You need to get out of there now. But it was too late. Through the chamber's massive viewing windows, Maria could see ships materializing in space around the station. These weren't the sleek, familiar vessels of the Federation fleet. These were ancient constructs, geometric impossibilities that hurt to look at directly. They had been hidden, waiting, prepared for this moment. General Catherine Ross's voice suddenly broke through on the emergency channel from Earth's defense headquarters. All stations were detecting massive energy buildups at the edge of our solar system. Unknown vessels are taking positions at regular intervals around our entire star system. This appears to be some kind of siege formation. The ancient ships began to glow with energy that existed in spectrums beyond normal comprehension. Beams of pure force shot out from each vessel, connecting with others in a complex pattern that formed a three-dimensional geometric cage around Earth's entire solar system. Maria felt the change immediately. The constant background hum of galactic communication networks, the subtle presence of faster-than-light communication that had connected Earth to thousands of worlds, simply vanished. The quantum entanglement channels that allowed near-instantaneous communication across the galaxy when Silent Earth was alone. Sethkar voice echoed through the chamber one final time. The barrier is complete. Humanity is now contained within their original system. They will have their sun, their planets, and their primitive technologies, but they will never again disrupt the peace and order of galactic civilization. As Maria was escorted from the chamber by security forces that didn't need to be rough because they knew she had nowhere to run, she caught fragments of conversations among the alien delegates. Many seemed uncomfortable with what had just happened, but none had spoken against it when it mattered. The knowledge they developed could have been useful, one representative was saying to another. "Don't worry," came the reply from a familiar voice that Maria realized belonged to High Analyst Kurthik of the Information Syndicate. "The barrier doesn't just contain them, it records everything. Every invention, every breakthrough, Every solution they develop in their isolation will be copied and stored. We'll harvest their creativity without having to deal with their disruptive presence. The truth hit Maria like a physical blow. This hadn't been about protecting galactic stability at all. This had been about stealing humanity's greatest asset, their innovative spirit, while eliminating their political influence. The aliens wanted human creativity, but not human voices in galactic affairs. As the station's security systems teleported her to a transport ship bound for the edge of Federation space, Maria activated one final message to Earth. If she was going to be exiled, she would make sure her people understood exactly what they were facing. "This is Ambassador Santos to Earth Command," she said into her emergency transmitter, hoping the message would get through before the barrier completely sealed them off. The vote was unanimous. We've been exiled and contained. But this isn't about us being too dangerous or disruptive. They're planning to steal everything we create while keeping us trapped. They want our minds, but not our voices. The transport ship crossed the barrier's threshold, and Maria felt the last of her connections to the galactic community fade away. Earth was now alone in the universe, facing a future where their only companions would be their own determination and ingenuity. But as the transport carried her toward the edge of human space, Maria smiled grimly. The aliens thought they understood. Humanity thought they could cage human creativity and harvest it like a crop. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest innovations had always come not from comfort and acceptance, but from being told that something was impossible. 20 years later, they would discover that they had not trapped humanity in a prison. They had given them a laboratory. The rules we erased 20. Years had passed since the Galactic Federation had caged Earth like a dangerous animal, and Captain David Park stood on the bridge of the HSV Prometheus, watching as his ship did something that should have been impossible. The sleek vessel, built from technologies that hadn't existed during the exile, moved through space-time itself, as if the fundamental laws of physics were merely suggestions. "Barrier penetration in 30 seconds, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the navigation station. Her voice carried the calm confidence of someone who had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. Like most of Earth's younger generation, she had been born after the exile, raised in a world where humanity's greatest enemy wasn't aliens, but the limitations others had tried to impose on them. David adjusted his uniform, a design that would have seemed alien to the Federation representatives, who had voted for humanity's exile. The fabric itself was woven from materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, providing protection against energy weapons that hadn't been invented when Earth was cut off from galactic civilization. "All departments report ready," announced Admiral James Wright from the command center deep within Earth's moon. His image appeared as a hologram on the bridge, his weathered face showing the satisfaction of a man who had spent 2 decades planning for this day. "Operation Homecoming is authorized to proceed." The Prometheus shuddered slightly as it passed through the quantum barrier that had imprisoned Earth for 20 years. The sensation was indescribable, like existing in several places at once, while somehow remaining whole. The ship's hull, composed of crystallized spacetime itself, adapted to the barrier's energy patterns and simply stepped through them. "We're through," Sarah reported, her voice filled with wonder despite all the simulations they had run. "The barrier integrity is holding. They don't even know we're here." David looked out at the stars that humanity had been denied for 2 decades. They looked the same, but everything else had changed. His ship carried technologies that would have seemed like magic to the aliens who had voted for humanity's exile. Humanity hadn't just adapted to their isolation. They had transcended it. The first sign that something was wrong in the galaxy came through their long-range sensors. Where the sensors expected to find thriving trade routes and bustling space stations, they detected debris fields and emergency broadcasts. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim said, her voice tight with concern. "I'm picking up distress signals from multiple systems. It looks like someone has been attacking Federation worlds." Admiral Wright's hologram leaned forward intently. "Specify." "The nature of the attacks." "Unknown enemy vessels, sir. The survivors are calling them the Void Swarm. According to these broadcasts, they consume entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind but empty space." David felt a chill run down his spine. During Earth's isolation, they had focused entirely on breaking free from their cage and advancing their technology. They hadn't considered that the galaxy might face threats that their traditional methods couldn't handle. The communication array suddenly crackled to life with an incoming transmission on old Federation emergency frequencies. The voice that came through was one David recognized from historical records. Council Prime Zethkar, the same alien leader who had orchestrated humanity's exile. "To any vessels in range." Zethkar's voice was filled with a desperation that would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. "The Galactic Federation formally requests assistance from any capable military forces. The Void Swarm has destroyed 17 core systems and is advancing toward the Federation capital. Our traditional defense networks have proven ineffective. Any species capable of innovative military solutions is asked to respond immediately." The irony was so thick it was almost tangible. The same Federation that had exiled humanity for being too innovative was now begging for the kind of creative thinking they had tried to suppress. "Orders, Captain?" Sarah asked. David smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Open a channel to the Federation emergency frequency." The response was immediate and filled with static from damaged relay stations. "This is Federation Central Command. Please identify your vessel and species designation." "This is Captain David Park of the Human Liberation Fleet," David said, letting the words hang in space like a challenge. "We received your distress call." The silence that followed was deafening. David could almost hear the alien minds struggling to process what they had just heard. Humans weren't supposed to exist outside their cage. The barrier was supposed to be impenetrable. "Impossible," came a different voice. One David's computer identified as belonging to High Admiral Vex Tar of the Federation Defense Force. "Containment barrier around the Sol system is still active. Our sensors show no breach." "Your sensors show what we allow them to show," David replied. "While you've spent 20 years following the same old strategies that failed against the Void Swarm, humanity has learned to rewrite the rules of reality itself." As if summoned by his words, more human ships began materializing throughout the galaxy. The HSV Einstein appeared near the Federation capital, its hull shifting through colors that shouldn't exist. The HSV Tesla emerged from folded space in the middle of a major trade route, its presence causing every sensor in the system to register impossible readings. "How many ships do you have?" Vextar asked, his voice barely a whisper. "As many as we need." Admiral Wright's voice joined the conversation from his command center. "But we're not here for conquest. We're here to save a galaxy that was too afraid of change to save itself." Dr. Sarah Kim, now the head of Earth's Xenological Research Division, materialized as a hologram next to David. Her research had been crucial in developing the technologies that allowed humanity to break free from their cage. "The Void Swarm represents a type of enemy your traditional military doctrines can't handle," she explained to the listening Federation forces. "They adapt to any static defense, consume any conventional energy source, and turn your own technology against you. Fighting them requires constant innovation, creative thinking, and the ability to abandon strategies that aren't working. In other words," David added, "it requires everything you tried to exile humanity for possessing." The next few hours changed everything. Human ships appeared in systems under attack by the Void Swarm, deploying weapons and defenses that shouldn't have been possible. They used reality warping technology to trap void swarm entities in pocket dimensions. They employed living metal that evolved in real time to counter enemy adaptations. They coordinated attacks using quantum consciousness links that allowed entire fleets to think as one. Most importantly, they shared their knowledge freely with any Federation species willing to learn new approaches. The battle for the Centauri cluster became the turning point. Federation forces had been retreating for weeks, losing ship after ship to an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. When the human fleet arrived, they didn't just fight the void swarm. They changed the very nature of the battlefield. Captain Lisa Torres, commanding the HSV Revolution, demonstrated humanity's new approach to warfare. Instead of trying to destroy the void swarm entities, her ship converted them into useful energy sources. Instead of defending fixed positions, her fleet created mobile reality zones that could be moved anywhere in space. The old rules of warfare assumed that enemies were separate from defenders. Torres explained to the amazed Federation officers watching the battle. We've learned that the universe is far more flexible than that. Every problem contains the seeds of its own solution. Within 6 months, the void swarm had been not just defeated, but converted into a beneficial force that helped clean up the debris from their own attacks. The transformation seemed impossible to traditional Federation thinking, but it was simply another example of humanity's refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. The aftermath of the crisis forced the galaxy to confront what humanity had become during their exile. Council Prime Zethkar, his crystalline shell now dulled with age and stress, requested a meeting with Admiral Wright aboard the Federation's capital station. "Your species has changed," Zethkar observed as he looked around the human command ship that served as Wright's mobile headquarters. The walls themselves were alive, shifting and adapting to optimize the ship's performance in real time. "We had to," Wright replied simply. "You gave us 20 years to think about how galactic civilization could work better. We used that time well. What do you want from us now?" Zethkar asked. "Revenge? Reparations?" Wright shook his head. "We want what we've always wanted, a galaxy where intelligence and creativity are valued over rigid hierarchy and artificial scarcity. We want a civilization that embraces change instead of fearing it." "And if we refuse?" Wright gestured toward the view screen, where human ships could be seen working alongside alien vessels to rebuild the systems damaged by the void. "Swarm, look around you, Zethkar. The old system already collapsed. The question isn't whether change is coming. The question is whether you'll help build something better or cling to the ruins of what failed." Over the following years, the transformation was remarkable. The rigid hierarchies that had dominated galactic politics for millennia gave way to merit-based cooperation. Species that had hoarded knowledge for thousands of years began sharing freely. The artificial barriers that had kept different civilizations separate dissolved as beings discovered they could accomplish far more working together than they ever had in isolation. The quantum cage that had once imprisoned Earth became a monument to the power of human determination. Instead of dismantling it, humanity converted it into a research station where scientists from across the galaxy came to study the technologies that had made the impossible possible. Ambassador Maria Santos, now in her 70s but still sharp, as ever, stood in the same assembly hall where humanity had been exiled decades earlier. But the chamber had changed as much as everything else. Instead of rigid seating arrangements that emphasized species differences, the space now featured flexible configurations that encouraged collaboration. The old Federation voted to exile humanity because we represented change, Maria said to the mixed audience of humans and aliens who had gathered to commemorate the anniversary of the exile. They were right to be afraid. We did change everything. But change isn't destruction. Change is growth. Change is life itself. She looked out at faces and forms that represented dozens of species, all working together toward goals that would have been unthinkable under the old system. The galaxy that exiled us no longer exists. In its place, we've built something better. A civilization based not on fear of what might be, but on excitement about what we can become together. The applause that filled the chamber came in wavelengths across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, as beings of energy, matter, and pure thought all expressed their approval in their own unique ways. It was a sound that would have been impossible under the old rules, a harmony that could only exist when different forms of life were free to contribute their own voices to the cosmic song. Outside the station, human ships continued to patrol the galaxy, alongside vessels from hundreds of other species, all of them equipped with technologies that blended the best innovations from every member civilization. The old barriers between species had been replaced by bridges of understanding and cooperation. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest gift wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. Their insistence that every problem could be solved if approached with sufficient creativity and determination. The Galactic Federation had voted to exile Earth because they feared what humanity might become. 20 years later, they discovered that humanity had become their salvation. And in saving the galaxy, humanity had transformed it into something worthy of the universe's infinite potential. The rules that had once seemed eternal had been erased, replaced by a simple principle that now guided galactic civilization. When intelligence and creativity are free to flourish, there are no limits to what life can achieve among the stars. The end